I have been applying to jobs. Uh, it's it was frustrating the last time I was unemployed for 6 months, and it's where it just crickets, where you're just like, what am I doing wrong? Like, every day is Groundhog's Day in terms of, okay, cool, like I've done my materials and I've sent them in, and so it's really disheartening and upsetting to see that the last time that I was in that position was 2015, applying for 6 months with nothing. And it's really disheartening. And I have so much pain for people every time I hear all of the things that we put on the screen, which is essentially the same thing over and over again, where it's like, I don't know which role I'm supposed to be going for. Nobody's giving you like a kind of crystal ball to kind of show you exactly what you should be doing. You're never hearing back. You never get any feedback. There's hundreds of applicants for a single role. Like the one that really always sticks out to me on this one is I have decades of experience, or I have so much experience, but I'm supposed to put it all on one piece of paper. Like, how is this a system? And then if we add on to this, essentially a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now, especially even just this year so far, tons of layoffs, a lot of uncertainty. So it feels like there's a lot of forces all colliding at the same time. So it's not your imagination that jobs have literally gotten harder to get. Obviously, there's been a lot of advances in ATS systems and kind of AI in recruiting. And realistically, you're going to get 10 seconds on an interview on a resume that you're spending hours on, right? And so, meanwhile, companies are increasingly trying to emphasize and prioritize and incentivize internal referrals. So a lot of times, even when a job is posted, it's already been backfilled. So they just leave it up, ghost postings, right? So on average in 2023, it took 5 months to have a job to get a job. We've been hearing a lot of like 7-8 week hiring processes that still end with a no. So you're like, if you combine all of these things at the same time, you're just like, how is anybody supposed to win? And that is the fundamental kind of problem that we are attempting to solve at least a part of on behalf of the candidates, right? So Virgin, I believe that this is when you take over,
Yes, it
if
is.
I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah,
yes, great. Smooth transition.
smooth transition. So here are the things that we see people doing that we actually think aren't huge value adds, right? We think you're actually extending the job hunt every time you, for instance, jump straight into applying without doing enough groundwork. And we'll tell you exactly what we mean by that. When you prioritize applying to more jobs instead of just applying more effectively to each individual job. When you spend time redesigning materials that don't need to be redesigned, you don't need to submit Canva slides or PDFs to application systems. We'll touch on that in a bit as well. But really plain, simple Word documents that are easy to read by the ATS is kind of what you want to go for. When you submit the same stuff everywhere, this is really one of the biggest problems. We see recruiters time and time again say that the biggest thing that you can do to improve your chances at their job is to tailor your materials to them, right? We'll get on that in a second. When you're reluctant to network, when you don't prepare for interviews until you get the invite, and most importantly, when you don't approach job hunting systematically, that's when things get harder and harder, right? And trust me, we've all been guilty of doing some, if not all of these things. I can personally say I have done every single one of those mistakes, right? So this is not a you thing. This is part of why we're building this company, is to kind of bridge the gap between sort of the conventional wisdom and the actual wisdom. But on the other hand, you are shortening your job hunt every time you apply to the right jobs and you present yourself in the right way. When you create those ATS and reader-friendly materials that are actually tailored to the role, when you set yourself apart through the knowledge that you have of the company and the role and the fit that you have with the role, you improve your chances of getting picked by networking. Like Logan said, 4 times more likely if you're an internal referral. When you prepare for a variety of interview questions and situations, and most importantly, when there's consistent and systematic effort. So, some of these I've already touched on. I'll just kind of briefly highlight that 61% of hiring managers think the custom resume is the #1 tactic. Half of job seekers don't actually tailor their resumes. And 65% of recruiters recommend sending out applications between 1 to 4 days. This is actually really like kind of a hard slide for us to put forward because that's a real challenge, right? How am I supposed to see a job, immediately jump on getting my materials organized, and then, get it out in a reasonable manner? That's hard. And so we're going to give you some advice around that. And then finally, when there's like these big deal breakers like bad grammar and unprofessional email address, but I think most importantly, a lack of quantifiable results. So there are 4 levers for job search success that we're going to talk about today. There's applying, interviewing, and networking, and all of those are held up by groundwork. So let's start with groundwork, right? It's what do I have to offer and what do I want to get are the questions that you're trying to answer. So on the rest of these slides, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of these slides, but essentially when you're pursuing each of these stages, kind of ask yourself these questions. And what you will realize is a big part of this process is just plain and simple self-reflection, right? We hate using that word. People don't like hearing that word. The reality is that like that is a really vital component because ultimately you are, or at least should be, the world authority on yourself, right? That's the mindset we want y'all to be sort of thinking in is, am I so kind of self-aware about the things that I know about myself and that I'm putting out that I am the world authority on, like, you know, on Mehrasenda or on Shanmukha. Shanmukha. Okay, got it. Glad I didn't pronounce that correctly. Okay, so on a personal level, you want to know to a very good amount of detail, what am I looking for my next job? And what are the ways in which I want to grow professionally? And then on the work experience side, you want to have really clearly thought out what are the responsibilities I've fulfilled, especially at my most recent job, what kind of impact have I had, and what kind of skills and traits have I honed. And you'll see over here that that personal knowledge is what drives your networking and your cover letters, but the work experience related knowledge actually touches on all of the major components of applying for a job, right? Take detailed notes. Again, it is really important that you kind of puts the stuff down on paper because, again, it kind of pushes your thinking and forces you to go into more depth than just, you know, the thoughts you can hold in your head. And then the super pro tip we have for you is use the Apply AI, but we'll talk about that at the very end. The bottom line, as I said, you're the world authority on yourself. You should act like it, right? Then when it comes to actually applying, ultimately it boils down to targeted applying with tailored materials. So picking the right places and presenting the right version of yourself to those places. So you want to ask yourself stuff like, does it being your materials, do they show that I have at least 70% of the required capabilities? This is most obviously done through your resumes. That's really important to remember, that your resume should be 70% or higher aligned with the things that they're asking from you in the next job, right? Do 70% or more of my bullets have an impact metric or a scale indicator? So an impact metric is pretty straightforward. It's like, what was the effect of my contributions on the org, on the team, on the bottom line, however you want to think about it. And then a scale indicator, simply put, is like, what is the level at which I was operating, right? Was I, you know, doing this thing, but I was working with C-suite or upper level management, right? Was I doing something, but it was with like our most important client, right? It's like, ultimately the resume bullet is showing 2 things. It is showing both your, like, the responsibilities that you have kind of done, but also the degree of impact and proficiency you have in them, right? The other way to think about it is, if you got 10 resumes and everyone only wrote out their responsibilities, how would I know whether to pick person A or person Z, right? It's pretty much impossible. The only way that a recruiter can really tell that, or yeah, well, I couldn't figure out what the 10th letter was.
26 candidates in that scenario,
candidates.
but we'll let it slide.
Thank you for fixing the metaphor. Right, like, you know, who do I pick? Who do I pick from? It's ultimately the person that is showing me the degree to which I can believe that they're good at that responsibility, right? Does my skills section cover 70% or more of the hard and soft skills that are stated or implied by my job description, right? Maybe a job doesn't say you need interpersonal communication, but you can tell that it involves a lot of teamwork. It involves a lot of, like, you know, liaising with different stakeholders. You can just assume that that's something that they're looking for. And then most importantly, and this is where there's a little bit of nuance, you want to ideally meet all of the required qualifications, but it is so important to know that you actually don't have to meet all of the preferred qualifications. In fact, it is okay for you to reach out if you don't hit every single thing. And quite frankly, this is just something that, like, affects kind of introverts. You know, generally, just statistically, it's something that holds women back more than men. Men just tend to apply because we think we can do it. And so, you know, it's not about, do I trust myself or do I not? It's about knowing that a recruiter is never going to get someone that ticks every single box, right? But you're a smart person. If you think you're a good fit, lean into that and actually like articulate that and then make sure that that comes across in your materials. The real big pro tip here that we have for you is to start with a master resume. So you can think about that as kind of everything you could possibly say about yourself, right? No one cares about length. No one cares about the number of skills you've included. Just like have one master resume. And then instead of what people kind of intuitively do, which is take the one resume they have and try to add new stuff every time they're applying to a job, which is painful and annoying and quite frankly, not very efficient. And instead, you have this master resume and you have a subtractive approach. You're just getting rid of the stuff that's less relevant, and you're able to ultimately end up with a tailored resume much more efficiently, much faster than before. And ultimately, the litmus test for you is if you look at your resume and it's obvious that this is a resume for this particular role, then you're golden, right? When it comes to
I'm just gonna
yes,
I'm interrupting very, very quickly. Sorry. So with the master resume as well, and I think I gave this tip to Maricin last week as well, but like if you're going for different types of roles in this master resume, it's hard to kind of be like, okay, am I going to be a product manager? I'm going to be over this. Like, still have them all in the same document. So you're not going off of separate sources, but you have like one single source of truth of all of your experiences, no matter how you want to spin it. And then you can have like a color coding system or like emojis or whatever floats your boat in terms of denoting in a role, because a lot of times one role might have different types of skills that can be applied to many different types of roles, right? So then you have color coding that could be like, this could be maybe both for product management and project management, right? So it's kind of like, that's another way. You don't need separate, the idea is that you should have one single source around all of your experiences and skill sets. And then it's still that subtractive one. And you can kind of just denote like, this one might be a bit better for this type of thing and this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sweet. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Awesome. Good to know.
I'm so glad to hear that tip worked. And again, Logan, excellent shout. Thank you for being inclusive of people that are applying to different roles. Because you're right, not everyone's applying to the same stuff, right? And so that's a great way to like build on the master resume and add just a little extra nuance. So to move on to cover letter, again, same principle, targeted applying with targeted materials. So with your cover letter, you want to ask yourself, and this is actually great because we were working on a cover letter with Maricinda earlier today based on our tool. Does it contain new information that isn't repeated on my resume? Does it clearly show why I want to take on this particular role at this particular company? That second part is actually so, so important and should actually be the crux of your cover letter. Again, think of it from a recruiter's perspective, right? Every time you've done a cover, from a candidate's perspective, we're thinking, okay, I've put in a resume, but like all these cool things I've done have been collapsed into a bullet. So what is the reflex? Let me use the cover letter to elaborate on the things that I think are the best about myself, right? Completely natural instinct. Unfortunately, you're shooting yourself in the foot because from the recruiter's perspective, they have just read your cover letter. They already know that bit of information about you. Or sorry, your resume. And now they're looking at your cover letter and basically learning nothing new, right? It may feel like for you that they're adding additional details, but that's not what the recruiter is looking for. Conversely, when everyone else is doing that, how do you stand apart? By going to the thing that they care about the most, that is the hardest to figure out from a resume, which is, hey, why do you care about this role that I'm putting out, right? That's the high value information on a cover letter. So this, cannot stress enough that it should really be focused more on the nature of your interest and the degree of your interest. Ideally, keep it under half a page. Ideally, address it to the specific hiring manager on that team. It just shows that little extra bit of effort, right? And again, same rules apply. If you read the cover letter, and actually if you cover up the company and you cover up the role and you read the cover letter and you go, oh yeah, this is clearly a learning design role at Khan Academy, then okay, now I know that like this is a good cover letter, right? I could have blocked out that information and still figured out after the fact that this is a design learning related role at this particular organization. And finally, look at Glassdoor, right? That's an easy way to get the inside scoop on a company. And also, quite frankly, a great way to avoid a really crappily rated company, right? Who wants to work at like a sub 3-star place? Not me. And certainly you should treat yourself better too. So again, bottom line, it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Companies have a lot more options than you. And so you won't be taken seriously until you show you're serious about the role. And for the vast majority of jobs, the easiest way to do that is by tailoring your materials and producing cover letters that are more interest oriented, in addition to some of those smaller tips that we discussed. Then we get to networking. We're almost through. We get to networking. Reach out to a person like a person, right? People want to get real messages from real people. So in the message, does it show that I've taken time to research the person and their company? You know, the inverse of that cover the company rule applies, right? If I cover my name on a networking outreach message that I get, and I just can tell that that has been copy pasted to like 100 different people, you know, my desire to respond to you is like at an all-time low. Right. So, you know, again, the reflex for a lot of people is it's a numbers game. The more people I reach out to, the more I will succeed. When in fact, the statistics involved are more so if you're giving yourself a 0.1% chance on every roll of the dice, you can be rolling dice till kingdom come and you won't really make kind of the progress that you want to make. Is it written in a friendly but professional manner? Is there a clear ask at the end? We tend to recommend asking for a 10-minute conversation to discuss the role and the company. 10 minutes is a small amount of time. People won't feel like it's taking too much of a burden out of their day, so they're more likely to respond. And it shows that you care about actually understanding what you're getting yourself into. I still remember, I cringe internally when I think about this email I wrote to an alum at Coursera, where I was just so hyped about a Coursera job opening up. I said, please, can you give me a referral to Coursera, right? In a real moment of weakness, the person never responded. And I think back and I go, I wouldn't have responded, right? That's like a bad message to send. Hey, can you just do me this favor because of insert tenuous relationship? So, you know, ask for something that shows that you care about that person's opinion, that person's perspective, and like then that's 2 touch points and you've actually built a relationship with them, right? And ultimately, am I putting my best self forward? And that means your LinkedIn has to be good, right? It has to look professional. It has to look well set up. It has to look that thought was put into it. You know, if it's like a barren wasteland, it just shows me that you haven't really put in the effort to represent yourself, and you're giving me less of a reason to like invest in you, right? Whereas I come across someone's LinkedIn that shows that, it's a lot more easy to kind of invest in that person. Logan?
And just on that note, LinkedIn is in this weird like no man's land in terms of like, is it Instagram but professional? Like, what am I supposed to put on there, right? So it's like in general, if you anticipate recruiters or hiring managers coming to your page, which theoretically you should, because that's the first thing that they do, you don't want it to just be a repeat of your resume. In the same way that your cover letter has something different, right? You can't tailor your LinkedIn to whoever's coming to your page yet. Maybe they'll come up with that soon, but it's like eventually what they want to see is a kind of storytelling aspect. So what we recommend is not just copy pasting the exact same bullet points from your resume to each experience. Leave it, if you don't want to tailor it, fine, don't, just leave a little bit to the imagination and just have skills. For example, that's a great way of showing how you've gained each skill with each experience, because that's an easy way. It shows up in a similar way to bullet points and achievements, but it doesn't take up quite so much room, right? So it's kind of just like they want to get a glance. And then the LinkedIn About Me section, like, again, we're biased. We think our tool is really good. Please, for the love of God, do not use the LinkedIn auto-generate AI, because it's only basing it off of really sparse information and it sounds really generated, right? So it's like there is a better way. We'll show you a better way at the end, but it's like make your LinkedIn at least different. If you don't want to spend a ton of time on it, fine, but make it look slightly different than your resume, even if it's just putting your experiences in and your skills. If you have the time and you have the desire to kind of be more active on LinkedIn in terms of posting, in terms of linking to articles and all that kind of stuff, great. But a lot of people don't really feel comfortable doing that, so we're not going to push that. But at minimum, it should be a nice differentiating factor between your LinkedIn, your resume, and a cover letter.
Totally. All of these elements act in concert, right? It's kind of, I mean, a great analogy is a song, right? A song has a chorus, it has a part that repeats that is like, you know, kind of
Yeah.
easy to grab onto. And so in a similar way, there are certain things that kind of will transcend all three of those elements, will be present everywhere. But then, you know, if we just had a song that was all chorus, we would turn it off immediately. And so that's where that variation really does make a difference. It just makes you come off as a more three-dimensional sort of person. So again, don't jump right into asking for a referral. Try to have at least one decent conversation before asking them to put in a good word. And always, always, always send a thank you the next day. Really basic, but like I cannot explain to you. This is like taught in business school, is like how not obvious this is. So again, maybe you all do this. You seem like nice people that would do it anyway. But on the off chance that you don't, like this is a really, really important way of like relationship management. And it's another touch point. The pro tip within the pro tip is to reference something important that they said in the conversation and develop it, right? If I had a conversation with Logan and she said, well, you know, at the Apply AI, we really care about, we really care about people being like a close collaborative unit, right? The next day you send out a message saying, I really thought about what you said about the Apply AI and their emphasis on collaboration. And I just think it's so great that you guys are consciously thinking about it. I'm not breaking new ground with my comment, right? But it signals to the other person that you're listening, that you're thinking about the things they've done. And ultimately you're like massively boosting your chances of them wanting to help you in some capacity. Because guess what? People want to feel wanted. They want to feel like they made a difference to you. And so it's just an important way. And, you know, ideally they did make a difference, and that is coming from a genuine place. And then again, bottom line, no one wants to waste their time, but most people want to help someone who comes off as professional, reliable, and enthusiastic. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. And then finally, interviewing, we could do a whole seminar just on interviewing. So, you know, forgive us for only touching on some of the main kind of high points, because a lot of this other stuff is kind of really important to getting those interviews. But when it comes to the interview, prepare flexibly, right? There's some things that everyone needs. So do I have a polished 1 to 2 minute answer for tell me about yourself? That is just vital, right? That is the baseline expectation for every single person. So you should have that pitch down, right? Then have I thought through the anecdotes related to my key achievements? So again, this is something where the Apply AI can come in, but it basically just boils down to like thinking through the stuff that's in your resume, right? Each bullet on your resume is something cool and awesome that you did. And so you should be able to talk about it. And again, try to set that benchmark for yourself where have I thought through this thing enough that I could just talk about it for 30 seconds to a minute and it would be okay. Because guess what? If it showed up on your resume, that means it's one of the best things about you. And if it's one of the best things about you, again, world authority rule applies, you should be able to talk about it, right? And then have you thought through answers about your strengths and your weaknesses, right? Again, speaking as an employer, a self-aware employee, someone that conveys that they are like intelligent enough to know what they're about, reduces my risk on the employee. Because if I think they're being honest, then I can trust their self-assessment. And if I can trust their self-assessment, then I know what I'm getting, which makes me way more likely to want someone to be my employee. So again, these are some of the basics, but again, they go a long way in showing that you're you're approaching this from a well thought out place. And then as far as practice is concerned, it's pretty simple. Can I deliver answers without looking at a script? And can I deliver answers while staring myself on camera, right? We're all on Zoom. This is a post-Zoom world. It is really weird to be looking at your own face. I cannot make eye contact with myself right now. I'm just looking at Logan, emotional support, right? It's hard. It's hard for all of us. But like, guess what? You're going to meet on Zoom call. You're going to have like that one other person on you, but you'll still be able to see your own face. And so it's just really important to be comfortable with that. The pro tip would be to write out each anecdote in that start format. If you're not sure what STAR, STAR, or START is, just Google it, and you'll get kind of a good rundown from a bunch of different websites. But it is the most basic and like honestly powerful way of structuring your interview answers. And it's a very logical way to deliver like 90% of behavioral interview answers. Again, super pro tip, use the Apply AI. A start formatted interview answer is something that comes out automatically when you use our tool. And so it just will give you a little bit of an edge. Lokes?
Um, I feel like we're just like Inception here, where it's like layering in pro tips within pro tips within pro tips. But whatever, however this would rank in there, I would say realistically, an interview is going to start off with a little bit of small talk, right? So, finished 1 to 2 minute answer for that tell me about yourself, but you know that they're probably going to start off with like, how are we doing today, where are you calling from, like the ability to have that small talk at the beginning is, it's going to be awkward. You're talking with a stranger on a computer, right? But like there is a way to prepare for that with a brief but memorable anecdote about your day. It doesn't have so that you're not just, because think of how like what a non-answer it is to be like, yeah, pretty good, little cold outside, ran some errands. You know what I mean? Like, and not that that's a bad thing, that's literally what I say like every day. I'm like, oh yeah, it's cold in Boston, like no shit, sorry pardon my French, but it's like
I
there's
get
a
that.
better, if I'm doing it for an interview, like I should probably say like, oh yeah, like I just dropped off my dog at doggy daycare. Like again, I'm making that up, but it's like it humanizes you. It allows the interviewer a glimpse into your life. It can be anecdotal about a family member, about something that you do every day. Like, oh yeah, I've had a great week. I've been really like regular with my volleyball practice. And they're like, cool, this guy plays volleyball. Like it doesn't have to be, it can be that like quickly mind and makes you more memorable and gives them an in. Because if you, yeah, day's going pretty well, like that's just shutting them down. So
Yeah.
I would probably try to come up with a few, and you can experiment and see what kind of reactions you get. And if you get one, it doesn't have to, it can be a little white lie. It doesn't have to be like, it can be something that happened last week. It doesn't matter. They're not going to fact check you on this, right? So it's like, if you have something fun that you've done, not like skydiving, like don't be too extreme with this, but like have something like interesting and like human and fun that they can relate to, that makes you stand out a little bit and opens the conversation in an interesting way.
Such a good tip. I mean, I can't, emphasize this enough. And I will say on this point, I know Maricinda a little bit more now because we've spoken before. I guess all I know about you, Shanmuka, is that you're Uma's brother. But if I know anything about her, I'm sure you're a great person as well. Like you guys are great people, right? The reason that maybe job hunting has been hard so far is not because you're making these like grievous errors that are like, you're a bad candidate, nobody likes you. It's so easy to feel that way when the reality is nothing we're recommending here is like a drastic change to what you're doing, hopefully, right? It's all just like these little adjustments that raise your percentage chance of success by a point, 2 points, 3 points. But when you add all of it up, boom, all of a sudden you're like a stellar applicant that people are running after, And so we really want to emphasize that point that what Logan said is just another one of these like little things that sets you apart. And you do enough of those little things, and guess what? Then you're like standing apart from the herd, That's how you kind of want to think about it. So again, great tip, Logan. And the bottom line is interview prep is about knowing yourself inside and out. So that's what you should do, right? And that's where it should be. So with that, did we go over time? 3 minutes over time. I
Little over.
really thought it would be faster
Okay.
this time around. Let's
We started 3 minutes late, to be fair. So I think we're allowed.
Okay, that's the moral justification I needed to not feel bad. We would love to use this time to answer any questions that y'all have, but we're gonna make sure that you get an email from us. You have our contact details. If you prefer to just ask us a question, kind of on your own time or via email or whatever that may be, that's totally cool. But yeah, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to bring up?
Thank you for all these tips and like pro tips, by the way. They're really insightful and helpful. And like you said, they're just like minor tweaks that I think do help, at least going into this feeling more confident. I've definitely been in that situation where it's like, I don't know what to say at the beginning when the conversation just starts.
So awkward.
Yeah. No,
Um,
it's hard. It's hard. This nobody teaches us to do this stuff. Like I had the benefit of an MBA. I was like way less knowledgeable before that. But even leaving us, you shouldn't have to go into education debt to like learn how to get a job. And so it's really not on you guys or y'all that this is like a difficult thing. This is just one of those weird things in society where everyone is expected to perform at such a high level to get a job and and no one is given the tools or the knowledge to succeed at that. And quite frankly, Logan and I think it's bullshit. So that's where the Apply AI sort of
Yeah.
comes in.
I did have one question, or the one area that I'm like working on. Is that sort of polished 1 to 2 minute answer for. Do you have any
Yeah.
suggestions for like a structure? Because I feel like I tend to like get excited or ramble on, and yeah, just what advice do you have for coming up with that sort of concise but impactful
So one of
answer?
the things that's a really good question. So
Mm.
one of the things they kind of tell you at business school is the tell me a little bit about yourself question, or whatever like variation of that you hear, is basically just walk me through your professional experience. So for me, it's not so much a
Mm.
structure as sort of a formula that I would give, where I would say it's like
Mm.
maybe 60 to 70% like you going through maybe the last 2 or 3 roles that you have and elaborating on some of like your big wins and like key responsibilities. I say that's the bulk of it. And then you can kind of end with like a little bit of a stinger, or sorry, and then kind of another maybe 20% or so that is like something that relates you to the interviewer or the role that you're interviewing for. So it's like, these are all the details about my background. An easy example is these are some of my professional interests. Like, I really, really like what I really liked about my previous roles is the amount of autonomy that I was given, because it really gave me the opportunity to be creative and explore. It's like revealing a little bit about yourself in sort of a meta way. But the thing that you're revealing about yourself is something that directly benefits your chances of getting this job, right? So it's like if you just focus on a retelling of your resume, that's kind of boring, right? Which again, same principle applies. Don't just repeat what was in your resume, build on it a little bit, and also don't go into the same level of depth as your resume. It's more of like a highlights reel is how you want to think about it, right? So give them that little highlights reel, and then end on a note of like, and so, broadly, this is who I am. These are my interests. And then at the very last 10%, depending on the vibe and depending on the role, you can throw in a little bit about like who you are as a person, right? Which, as Logan said,
Yeah.
nobody wants to work with like a robot. Like they want to work with a real person. And so some combination of like looking up a person, knowing, let's say that they're like volunteering at like the Humane Society for Animals, and just and like being intelligent enough to go, and yeah, one of my favorite things to do is like play with my cats. Like it's really, it's a combination of like being strategic but also using that very last slice of time to reveal a little bit about who you are as a person, who you would be as a colleague. So I would say that would be
Yeah.
sort of my go-to formula, which I guess is a structure that I've given you. But hopefully that little white lie was acceptable. Is anything to add?
I think you hit the nail on the head. And in that sense, it's a little bit more like the cover letter in that you're like, why am I here right now? It's kind of like that idea of like, this is not about my experiences, but it's kind of like, how can I, it's actually a combination of the resume and the cover letter in that sense, where it's like, here's what I've done to be here right now, to be able to serve this role for you. And then the human, funny personality, whatever it might be at the end. And I will say, I used to really wing these and tell people like, don't be too prepared. Because this is like one of those skills that like you're going to get this question, whether it's in this job application round or the next job application round, or God forbid in like 4 applications round from now, this is going to be a question that you're going to get until the end of time. Even when you're retired, people are going to be like, tell me about yourself. So it's like, realistically, it's not going to be a bad thing to continue to practice, right? So it's like, I had a great public speaking coach one time where he was like, it's about mastery, not memorization. So you're not
Yes.
memorizing the entire answer, but you're practicing it enough, like verbatim all the time, so that it's something that you know how to do with your eyes closed in the dark with headphones on or whatever. But then you can kind of riff, right? Where it's like if you know exactly what it is, what the notes that you want to hit are, then that's when you feel a little bit more confident about improvising in the moment, maybe adding in like something about your dog or whatever at the end. But realistically, this is the one thing that they're going to decide probably within the first few minutes of what their impression of you is. It's not that they're going to decide whether you're getting the job within the first few minutes, but like the small talk at the start and that first answer is where you have the chance that you don't have to think on your feet. You know that it's coming. So it's the part of the process that you can really nail your preparation. So yeah, do it in the mirror, do it with your cab driver, do it with your partner. Like it's the type of thing that the more practice that you get, the better you are going to be at it. It's a sport. You need to keep shooting
Absolutely.
hoops.
Absolutely.
Right? Over and over and over again, right? Like there's no way around it. Just practice that because otherwise it's never going to get easy. And you can kind of bring in like 2 or 3 sentences about the specific role or opportunity, but like just that the framework is always the same.
Yeah, 2 things to sort of build on what Logan said. She pointed out a really important paradox when it comes to this answer, which is to an extent, they expect you to be prepared and therefore are willing to accept a certain amount of rehearsedness because they know you know to expect this. So if you consider that
Yeah.
like level 0 is like totally winging it, which we don't recommend. Level 1 is highly structured. I know beat by beat, kind of line by line what I'm doing. The next level and kind of where you want to go is you have like so deeply internalized what you're going to say that you don't need a script, that you just know the beats, right? If you're like an actor, if you're like one of those actors that wins an Oscar, leaving aside how rigged that friggin' election system is. But like if you're one of those actors, right, you get given a script, but you are given a lot of autonomy to infer and to communicate your version of what's on the script, right? The script is just these are the ideas and feelings that need to be communicated is what the script is telling you. So treat yourself like an actor, kind of riff on it. And actually, Logan reminded me this like thing that I started doing for my McKinsey interviews that I think really helped was that part I told you about, like revealing a little bit about yourself that's related to the org. I would basically pick something that initially feels like it's just all about me and then end with, and that's actually why I'm here to interview at McKinsey, right? So it's like no matter what I picked, it was the kind of thing that I knew they would want to hear that reflected my excitement for the job, and that I would end with like, and that's kind of why I'm here interviewing. So it's like it kind of puts a really nice bow on it. And I think Logan kind of really made that point very well too, that like you want to make it seem natural and effortless, but you want to think through everything that you're saying. I guess that's ultimately what we're trying to communicate to y'all. Any other questions? That was a very good one.
I don't have any questions, but I was really impressed with that master resume. I mean, I was trying to change every time whenever I find a role, but this was really interesting because from now on, I'll start building my master resume and then remove the stuff which is not relevant.
Amazing. That's all we care about, right? That you found something actionable, something that just gives you confidence that it's going to be easier after kind of attending this event. So again, really glad that you guys could join. You'll get emails from us, but you have our details, so feel free to reach out yourself. A very quick word on the tool. Mary Senda already knows a lot about it, so Shanmukha, I'm happy to kind of set up a one-on-one to kind of walk you through it. But again, the key aspect of it, and the only thing I really want to emphasize is that it's built around that idea of groundwork, and its most obvious feature is groundwork oriented. And so if you have these experiences, it's a conversation with an AI. If you have these experiences that you think, hey, it would be good if I thought through this a little bit more. It would be good if I had like an analysis of what this means about me. It would be good if I was able to, and this is stuff we can do for you privately. It would be really good if like I could have a few conversations with the AI and then just get an interview prep game plan, which I want to pull up real quick just because Marisenda said that she
Yeah,
has
this is really
a
cool.
interview. So I want to kind of show y'all what I mean by that. New share. There we go. So, Cedric C, interview game plan. So this is like, still a little, still a little rough. This was like our very first attempt at it. But essentially, if you have 3 conversations with our AI and share a job description, we can give you a summary of what the AI thinks their ideal, who the AI thinks their ideal candidate is, based on your conversations, the skills that you should be emphasizing during that call, a selection of behavioral questions that you can expect that is based on not only what you have said about yourself, but of the call, a list of technical questions. If you're a technical person, I believe, Shanmukha, you have a data science degree, right? So this might be more relevant for you. If there are any kind of specific pieces of advice based on what we know about your experience, questions that you can ask the interviewer, and then kind of a SWOT analysis where like actually the most interesting part is like, what are your threats, right? Based on what we know about you, what you should be worried about, and based on what we know about you, what can you talk about? That's the opportunities. What can you talk about to kind of stand out? So, if that's something that you're interested in, Marisenda, we already have your info, so we can generate this for you for whatever job that you want. But Shanmukha, I'm gonna kind of type out the Logs, could you type out the tool in chat?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
essentially, feel free to use the tool, maybe parcel out like 5 minutes to kind of have a conversation with the AI. You can talk to it, you can type to it. We recommend talking. It's pretty good at making sense of whatever you say. And that's about it. And then, we can generate all these cool things for you that'll really give you an edge for whatever job you apply for. So that's pretty much it. That's all we have for y'all, folks. But thank you so much for taking the time to come out. Thank you so much for hearing us. And we hope you enjoy using the tool. Logs, any other final words?
That's it. Yeah. Hopefully it was
That's a
helpful.
wrap.
We're always here. We're doing these. Feel free to reach out, email, whatever. We're here. We're here to help.
Yeah. And thank you guys so much again for coming, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you. This is super helpful.
Hell yeah. Take
Thank
care,
you,
y'all.
both of you, for the session. Yeah.
Bye.
Absolutely. Let's keep in touch.
No worries. Bye.
Ciao.
So, bye.